April 1st, 11:43 p.m. Saad Robinson's phone goes dark for the last time. Her location, the basement of a house of horrors. In 12 hours, a jogger will find her severed leg. In 72 hours, more body parts will surface. But right now, in this moment, a 19-year-old girl with dreams of flying fighter jets is taking her final breath because she said yes to the wrong man.
A romantic encounter
All she wanted was love.
with a monstrous end.
Who the would do something like this to my beautiful baby?
The death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson
Just like breaks my heart.
is the stuff of nightmares.
We still don't have all of her remains.
This week on Open Record,
And there was somebody randomly walking past the lake and saw it.
the evidence scattered across 2 states,
Our investigators have worked around the clock.
and why prosecutors say it all points to one man,
This sick son of a is gonna pay.
accused of luring an innocent woman into a date with death.
Welcome back to True Crime Tales HQ, the only place where we don't just tell stories, we resurrect voices that were silenced and illuminate truths that powerful people want buried. Before we begin today's journey into darkness, I need something from you. That little thumbs up button? It's not just a click. It's your vote that justice matters. Hit subscribe, because every single one of you makes it possible for us to dive deeper, investigate harder, and bring these stories the attention they deserve. And that notification bell? Turn it on. Because the cases we cover, they're not just entertainment. They're warnings. They're lessons. They're the difference between recognizing danger and becoming its next victim. If today's story moves you, if it angers you, if it opens your eyes, share it. Your share isn't just engagement. It could be the warning that saves a life. Today, we're not just telling you about a crime. We're exposing a system that failed so catastrophically, so repeatedly, that it allowed a documented predator to evolve from domestic abuser to calculated killer. This is the story of how red flags were ignored, how warning signs were dismissed, and how one woman's excitement about a first date became a community's worst nightmare. This is the story they don't want you to remember. But we're going to make sure you never forget. Let's begin. But before we dive into the darkness, before we confront the monster who stole her future, you need to know who Saad Robinson really was. Because she was so much more than a victim. Born on May 10th, 2004, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, Saad Carlina Robinson came into this world with a light that everyone could see. When she was barely 2 years old, her mother Sheena Scarborough brought her to Milwaukee, searching for a better life. Sheena never imagined she was raising a daughter who would become the heartbeat of everywhere she went. At Pizza Shuttle on Milwaukee's east side, where Saad worked as a cashier, she wasn't just an employee. She was family. Manager Justin Romano described her perfectly. Very outgoing. She would talk to everybody here. She was always there to lighten the mood. Customers didn't just come for the pizza. They came to see Saada's smile. She knew them by name. She remembered their orders, their stories, their kids' birthdays. She elevated people. Her coworker Quincy Alexander, who worked alongside her for nearly 4 years, called her a friend. When she went missing, he said his heart just dropped. He saw all his coworkers crying. Former owner Mark Gold had invited Saad to her graduation from Milwaukee Area Technical College. He was shocked when he got that worried text from an employee. Sometimes people miss shifts, he said, but not Saad. Because Saad had plans. Big plans. She was studying criminal justice, about to graduate with her degree. But her dreams reached even higher than that. She wanted to serve her country. The United States Air Force was calling her name. She dreamed of flying fighter jets, of protecting the skies above America. Julia Ferrara, whose son Benicio worked with Saad, watched their friendship bloom. They vibe, they listened to music, they laughed, they talked about everything, she said. When Saad disappeared, Benicio was devastated. But Julia knew what Saad would tell him. I don't want you to be sad. I want you to keep living your life. Saad was the girl who always laughed, always smiled, always made customers and employees feel welcomed. She lit up every room she entered, which makes what happened next even more heartbreaking. Because on Monday, April 1st, 2024, this vibrant, independent, driven young woman was excited about something that should have been perfectly normal. A first date. She had met someone who seemed charming, someone who suggested dinner at a seafood restaurant, someone who made her feel special enough to ask her mother for $15, unusual for Saad, who was always so independent. Sheena Scarborough was happy to send the money. She had no idea it would be their last conversation, because the man Saad was getting ready to meet had been planning this moment for much longer than she could have imagined. Coming up, we'll walk through Saada's final day, hour by hour. We'll see how a routine first date became a nightmare. And we'll meet the monster who had been hunting for the perfect victim. April 1st, 2024 started like any other day for Saad. She was at her apartment building on Commerce Street, chatting with staff. She was excited, more excited than they'd seen her in a while. She had a date that night. A first date. 4:15 p.m. Saada's phone lights up with text messages. The number belongs to Maxwell Anderson, though she doesn't know the darkness behind that name yet. They're arranging dinner. Anderson suggests the Twisted Fisherman restaurant on Canal Street. Are you hungry? He writes. I need to stop at Twisted Fisherman to pick up my W-2 from last year, and we could eat there first. The detail about the W-2 form, it seems so innocent, so practical. But it's calculated. You see, Anderson used to work at Twisted Fisherman. He knows the layout, the staff, the cameras. He's choosing familiar ground. Saad responds, okay, and yes, I love seafood. Those would be some of her last text messages. 5:20 p.m. Surveillance cameras at Twisted Fisherman capture the moment Saad Robinson walks through the door. She's wearing ripped jeans and a white shirt, the same outfit her family would later find burned in her car. She spots Anderson at the bar. He's already there, has been waiting. He told the bartender this was a first date, proud, almost boastful about it. The staff would later remember this detail, because Anderson used to work there. They knew him. For the next hour and 4 minutes, they sit together, eating, drinking, talking. The surveillance footage shows what looks like a normal first date. Saad is animated, engaged. Anderson is attentive. She has no idea she's sitting across from a man who has been planning her murder for weeks. 6:30 p.m. They leave Twisted Fisherman together. Saad drives. It's her 2020 Honda Civic. They head to Duke's on Water, a nearby bar on the trendy Water Street district. At Duke's, Saad sends a Snapchat to her friends. A simple photo from the bar. She's still excited, still having fun. It's the last image her friends will ever receive from her. What Saad doesn't know is that her phone is being tracked. Not by police. They don't even know she's in danger yet. But by the Life 360 app, a location tracker her friends use to stay connected. 8:30 p.m. They leave Duke's together. The digital trail shows them traveling south to Anderson's home on 39th and Oklahoma Avenue. This is where the timeline becomes horrifying. For the next 4 hours and 18 minutes, Saada's phone remains stationary at Maxwell Anderson's address. For hours and 18 minutes, in a house where police would later find blood on the walls, restraints in the basement, and what investigators described as a sex dungeon. We can only imagine what those hours contained. What Saad endured. What Anderson did to her in that basement he had been preparing for weeks. 12:48 a.m., April 2nd. Something changes. Saada's phone starts moving again. But Saad is no longer able to move it herself. The phone travels north through downtown Milwaukee. It passes near Saada's apartment building, cruel irony, so close to home. Then it continues north to Pleasant Valley Park along the Milwaukee River. 1:33 a.m. The phone stops at Pleasant Valley Park for 27 minutes. Investigators believe this is where Anderson disposed of some of Sada's remains. 2 a.m. The phone leaves Pleasant Valley Park and heads south to Warnemont Park in Cudahy, arriving at 2:45 a.m. 2:53 a.m. Surveillance cameras from nearby Cudahy High School capture a car heading toward the pump house at Warnemont Park. The same park where in just hours, a morning jogger will make a discovery that will change everything. 3:02 a.m. The cameras capture something else. A human figure descending the bluff toward the beach level, carrying something, disposing of something. 4:31 a.m. The vehicle leaves Warnemont Park. Minutes later, at 4:35 a.m., Sod Robinson's phone loses battery and goes dark forever. But Maxwell Anderson isn't done. 7:30 a.m. A car explodes into flames in an alley behind Patricia Newton Powell's house near 30th and Lisbon Avenue. She calls 911, watches the airbags explode, hears the car alarm screaming. It's Sada's Honda Civic. Anderson has torched it, trying to destroy the evidence. But he's made a mistake. Surveillance cameras from the Milwaukee County Transit System capture Anderson getting on a nearby bus shortly after the car fire. He's wearing a gray hoodie and backpack, exactly matching what investigators will find in his home. Same morning, different location. A jogger runs through Warnemont Park in Cudahy. It's a beautiful morning by Lake Michigan. The sun is rising. The birds are singing. Then they see it. A human leg, severed cleanly just below the hip. Pink nail polish still gleaming on the toes. Sod Robinson's final hours weren't just a first date that went wrong. They were a carefully orchestrated murder, planned weeks in advance by a predator who had been hunting for the perfect victim. And he thought he had committed the perfect crime. But Maxwell Anderson had no idea that digital evidence would be his downfall. Phone records, surveillance cameras, and location tracking would paint a picture so clear, so damning, that even he couldn't talk his way out of it. I need to pause here for just a moment. What you've just heard, the timeline, the planning, the calculated evil, this isn't fiction. This actually happened. To a real person. To someone's daughter. If this story is hitting you as hard as it should, do something about it right now. Hit that like button, not for me, but because stories like Sada's need to be heard. Subscribe, because every subscription helps us expose predators like Maxwell Anderson. And share this. Seriously. Share it with someone who dates online. Share it with someone who needs to see the warning signs. Your share could literally save someone's life. Because what comes next, what Maxwell Anderson did to prepare for this murder, it will haunt you. But you need to hear it. Coming up, we meet the monster behind the plan. Maxwell Anderson's shocking criminal history, the house of horrors police discovered, and the confidential informant who revealed Anderson had been planning this murder for an entire month. Maxwell Stephen Anderson, 33 years old, bartender, charming smile, and beneath it all, a predator who had been planning murder for weeks. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a date gone wrong. This was a carefully orchestrated hunt. And Sod Robinson was the prey. Let's start with what police found when they searched Anderson's house on April 4th, just 2 days after Sada's leg was discovered on that beach. Blood. Blood on the bedding in one of the bedrooms. Blood on the walls leading toward the basement. Several gasoline containers in the garage. But that was just the beginning. In the basement, investigators found what multiple law enforcement sources described as a sex dungeon. But it gets worse. Much worse. According to newly unsealed search warrants, police found women's clothing hidden between basement support beams and tucked into foundation walls. Underwear. Personal items. A Crown Royal bag containing an ID belonging to a 27-year-old woman who wasn't Sod Robinson. They found notebooks. Notebooks filled with other women's names and personal information about them. Like a hunting ledger. A large black axe hanging prominently on his living room wall. Multiple firearms. Hidden USB drives. And when they searched his car, they found what appeared to be blood in plain sight on the front passenger door speaker. But the most chilling discovery came from a confidential informant who had been inside Anderson's house on March 5th, nearly a month before he killed Saad Robinson. This informant told police that Anderson had shown him the basement. Proudly, like a tour guide showing off his masterpiece. The basement was covered floor to ceiling with painter's tarps, taped to every surface. There was a sanitation sink, 3 saws, and Anderson told this informant exactly what he was planning to do. According to the warrant, Anderson said he planned to bring Robinson to his residence, pull a handgun on her, and bring her down to the basement. He would then shoot Robinson and dismember her body in the room they were in, before disposing of Robinson's body throughout the city. A month before their first date, Maxwell Anderson was already planning Saad Robinson's murder, planning exactly how he would kill her, planning exactly how he would cut her apart, planning exactly how he would scatter her remains across Milwaukee. This young woman, excited about a seafood dinner, never had a chance. But who was Maxwell Anderson before he became a killer? His background reads like a textbook case of escalating violence. 2014, disorderly conduct conviction in Waukesha County after an incident with a family member. 2015, Door County domestic abuse, intimidating a witness, and criminal damage to property. Court records show he was accused of shoving a woman, smashing her cell phone, and breaking things in the kitchen. 2019, second offense, drunk driving conviction. 2022, driving with a suspended license. A pattern of violence against women. A pattern of escalation. A pattern that should have been a warning. Anderson grew up with privilege. His father ran a multi-million-dollar insurance brokerage with offices in multiple states. The family had ties to Waukesha County's elite. Anderson attended Catholic Memorial and Pewaukee High Schools. The family owned a nearly $3 million lake home in Oconomowoc. But Maxwell chose a different path. He worked as a bartender at various Milwaukee establishments, the Rave, Victor's nightclub, and yes, Twisted Fisherman, where he would later lure Saad Robinson for their final date. Anderson even served briefly in the Navy, from April 2011 to January 2012, though it's unclear why his service ended so abruptly. This was a man who understood how to charm people, how to gain their trust, how to make a 19-year-old college student excited about a first date. But when a friend visited Anderson's home and he offered to show them the basement, Anderson himself said, "It's creepy down there." Even he knew what he had created. The most disturbing part? Anderson thought he had planned the perfect crime. He had the location. He had the tools. He had the disposal plan. He even had the cleanup equipment, those gasoline containers to burn her car, destroy the evidence. What he didn't count on was technology, phone tracking, surveillance cameras, digital footprints that would lead investigators straight to his door. When police arrested Maxwell Anderson on April 4th during a traffic stop near his home, they thought they had caught a killer. What they didn't realize was they had caught something much worse. Because the evidence suggests Saad Robinson wasn't Anderson's first victim. She was just the first one they found. Coming up, the search that horrified even seasoned investigators. The community's explosive response. And the question that still haunts Milwaukee. How many other women did Maxwell Anderson hunt before he found Saad Robinson? The horror of what Maxwell Anderson did to Saad Robinson wasn't fully revealed in one terrible moment. It unfolded slowly, piece by piece, across the streets and shorelines of Milwaukee County. Each discovery more devastating than the last. April 2nd, 7:30 a.m. The first discovery. A morning jogger at Warnemont Park in Cudahy finds a human leg, severed cleanly just below the hip. Pink nail polish still gleaming on the toes. The leg had been sawn off, according to the criminal complaint. Not torn, not ripped, sawn, with the precision of someone who had practiced. But that was just the beginning of a nightmare that would traumatize an entire community. April 5th, Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputies find more body parts on Milwaukee's north side, near where Sada's car had been torched. April 6th, as police canvass the area around 30th and Lisbon Avenue, they discover a human foot and what appeared to be human flesh. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because while law enforcement was processing these crime scenes, Saad Robinson's family was doing something that would expose a disturbing truth about this investigation. They were finding evidence that police had missed. April 6th, the same day police found the foot, Sada's family went searching in the exact area that had already been combed by investigators. And they found her blanket, right there, in a location that had supposedly been thoroughly searched. April 7th, the family searches again. And again, they find human remains. Remains that brought police racing back to a scene they thought they had already processed. The message was clear. If you wanted to find Saad Robinson, you couldn't rely on law enforcement alone. What happened next showed the best of humanity in the face of unimaginable evil. Milwaukee rallied. Strangers became searchers. The community that had embraced Saad in life refused to abandon her in death. "This is someone's daughter," said community member Dee David. "I don't know the family, but I want to make sure they know the community loves and supports them." Jasmine McCullum joined the search, saying, "I just know it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, I didn't know her personally, but when we see her, we see our girls." April 12th, the day Maxwell Anderson was formally charged. While he sat in a courthouse facing murder charges, dozens of volunteers spread across Milwaukee County in a search effort that would last from 12:30 in the afternoon until sundown. Jackson Park, Pleasant Valley Park, the shoreline at Warnemont, the railroad tracks near 30th and Galena. Anywhere the criminal complaint mentioned, the community searched. As volunteer Rochelle Posey put it, "She's somebody's kid and she deserves justice. She deserves to be put to rest the correct way, and this isn't the way." Sada's uncle David Scarborough, too, captured the family's anguish. "My sister and parents won't stop shaking, and it's not because they're nervous. Imagine trying to bury your niece with no body for the service." Then, on April 18th, 16 days after that jogger found the first leg, Lake Michigan gave up more of its terrible secrets. 7:37 a.m. A citizen walking along a remote stretch of beach in South Milwaukee makes a horrifying discovery. A torso and an arm washed ashore about a quarter mile from an apartment complex. Angela Buchanan, who lived nearby, captured the community's horror. Just the brutality of everything. Cutting up somebody's body is just, it's hard to even say the words. Nearby, resident Topanga Brogdon watched investigators from her backyard. They came back up carrying the body bag. Hectic, scary, kind of like shocking. But even this discovery, even after weeks of searching, wasn't the end. Nearly a month later, in May, another human arm, suspected to be Sada's, was discovered along the shoreline at Waukegan Municipal Beach in Illinois. The lake had carried her remains across state lines. Throughout all of this, questions mounted about law enforcement's response. When TMJ4 reporter Jenna Ray tracked down Milwaukee County Sheriff Danita Ball at the courthouse, the conversation was telling. "Can you tell me exactly what you guys have been doing over the last couple of weeks to try and find her?" Sheriff Ball's response, "That's still part of the ongoing investigation." But the family and community had a different perspective. They had been to multiple search sites with volunteers, yet there were no signs of law enforcement. Sada's cousin Kiana spoke for many when she said simply, "We just want to bring her back home." Law enforcement did eventually deploy more resources. Sonar boats searched Lake Michigan. Bruce's Legacy, a non-profit maritime search and rescue team, conducted underwater searches at Warnemont Park. They found nothing. The lake had already given up what it was going to give up. But the most disturbing aspect of this entire search wasn't what was found. It was what wasn't found. To this day, Not all of Saad Robinson's remains have been recovered. Maxwell Anderson scattered her across Milwaukee County so thoroughly that parts of this young woman, this daughter, this sister, this light in her community, may never be found. As volunteer Latoya Crawford put it, I wouldn't be able to even sleep knowing that my baby is a little bit of everywhere in this city right now. But Milwaukee didn't give up. Even as the official searches wound down, volunteers continued combing beaches, parks, and railroad tracks. Because in a city that had embraced Saad Robinson in life, they weren't going to abandon her in death. Coming up, the community fights back. The racist backlash that tried to silence Saada's memory. The memorial that became a movement. And the question that still haunts Milwaukee. In a city where young black women go missing regularly, why did it take a dismemberment to get anyone's attention? But this story isn't just about a monster and his victim. It's about what happened when a community refused to let darkness win. In the face of unspeakable evil, Milwaukee showed the world what love looks like when it fights back. April 15, 2024. 3 days after Maxwell Anderson was formally charged with murder. Evening was falling on South 39th Street, and something extraordinary was about to happen. Dozens of community members gathered outside Maxwell Anderson's house, the last place Saad Robinson was seen alive, the place where she died, the place that had become synonymous with horror. But they weren't there for revenge. They weren't there for destruction. They were there to transform darkness into light. They called it a pink out. Saada's favorite color. For hours, strangers who had never met her covered Anderson's property with bright pink balloons, posters, flowers, and stuffed animals. "This is a place of darkness," said Nicole Green, who drove over an hour to be there. "And now it's a place of light." These weren't just friends and family. Most of these people had no direct connection to Saad Robinson. But as community supporter Stormy Walker explained, being here to support her mom, you can see that she is not alone. Everyone here is grieving with her. Nicole Green, a 50-year-old woman, captured why this mattered. "Ms. Robinson is me. She's millions of women and young girls that look like me. I am 50 years old, and I can relate to her. All she wanted was love." By the time they were done, Anderson's house, his monument to evil, had been completely transformed. Pink covered everything. Even the for sale signs that had gone up were draped in pink. As Nicole Green put it, "It is what is. But it doesn't have to stay what it is." And so we changed it. The pink out was just the beginning. The community response kept growing. April 19th, a candlelight vigil at Kilbourne Reservoir Park. Dozens gathered despite cold weather and wind, carrying pink balloons, sharing memories, demanding justice. Saada's sister Adriana Ream spoke through tears. Anybody who knew Saad knew that she was different from everybody else. She went through a lot even before she died, and she never let it break her. "She was the strongest person I know." Her grandmother Linda Scarborough added, "She was my best friend. I will miss her. We had so much happiness and fun together." Between tears and memories, the crowd chanted in unison, "Justice for Saad. Justice for Saad." What started as grief was becoming something bigger. A movement. Community members like April Bentley, a survivor of human trafficking, saw themselves in Saada's story. "I don't know her personally, but I know her personally. This hurt runs so deep." While law enforcement resources dwindled, volunteers like Dashid Crutchfield kept searching. The police is not doing enough. She is not an animal. She is a human being. But then, almost a year later, the community faced its greatest test. And it revealed just how deep racism runs, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. January 2025. Milwaukee County Supervisor Juan Miguel Martinez worked with Saada's mother, Sheena Scarborough, to create a memorial at Warnemont Park, the place where her leg was found. A simple bench. $7,000 in public funding. It should have been uncontroversial. A memorial for a young woman who was murdered and dismembered. Instead, it unleashed a torrent of hate that shocked even seasoned officials. A flurry of racist emails, Martinez reported to the County Parks and Culture Committee. Emails asking, "Why should black folks get this when white folks don't get this?" County Supervisor Jack Ekblad described what he received. There were plenty of folks who just had honest, empathetic things to say, but there were others who really crossed several lines. County Supervisor Felicia Martin captured the racism plainly. There was an outcry saying taxpayers of Milwaukee County ought not to be paying for a memorial simply because another black person has lost their life. The family, already devastated by loss, now faced a choice no grieving mother should have to make: accept public funding and endure racist attacks, or withdraw their request and pay for the memorial themselves. Sada's cousin Kiki explained their decision. "I thought it was cool at first because obviously it was a memorial for Saad. But then things instantly changed for the family. We started getting negative feedback from community and people, and we just didn't want that." Sheena Scarborough, who had already buried her daughter in pieces, now had to make another impossible choice. She told Martinez to withdraw the resolution. She didn't want Sada's name attached to controversy. Martinez didn't mince words. "I just want to say shame on people for treating a grieving mother this way and making it a race thing, and treating her subhuman when it's absolutely unnecessary and absolutely unethical. And it shows the most disgusting and detestable parts of our society." But Milwaukee's community wouldn't let hate win. Omar Sheikh, co-owner of Carnivore Steakhouse and 3rd Street Market Hall, stepped forward. He organized a private fundraiser to cover the memorial costs. "This is the real Milwaukee," Sheikh declared. "Not the emails and racist emails. This is the real Milwaukee, showing love and support." The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, the GoFundMe that had $3,000 surged to nearly $33,000, with additional thousands raised through other channels. The money would fund not just the memorial, but scholarships, self-defense classes, and the first annual Sada's Voice Community Artist Gala, all in Sada's honor. As community member Barb Hull, who had known Saad from Pizza Shuttle, said at the fundraiser, "She was the most beautiful young lady that I ever met." But this controversy exposed something deeper, something that the community activists had been saying all along. As Erica Brown, Sada's family friend, pointed out, "We care about all missing women, but we recognize the disproportionate rate of us black women coming up missing, and we have to step up. The numbers are staggering. Black women make up a disproportionate percentage of missing persons cases, yet receive far less media attention and resources." It took a dismemberment to get Milwaukee's attention. It took body parts washing up on beaches to make people care about a 19-year-old black woman who had dreams of flying fighter jets. That's why Sheena Scarborough and Erica Brown launched Sada's Voice, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing resources, awareness, and policy change to families facing similar situations. As Sheena explained, "I did not ask to be chosen to be the voice for the community, and that my daughter was chosen as the angelic spirit to speak for all of the lost black and brown girls going missing. But she's doing it to save others from the pain I'm experiencing now. Because Saad speaks to me daily. What started as one family's nightmare became a community's calling. What began as racist emails became a fundraising triumph. What was meant to silence became a voice that couldn't be stopped. Because that's what Saad Robinson's story really is. It's not just about a monster who hunted and killed. It's about a community that refused to let darkness define them. Coming up, the legal battle begins. Maxwell Anderson faces a jury of his peers. And the question that will determine everything: can the digital evidence, the witness testimony, and the physical remains prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this man planned and executed the perfect murder? And now, after more than a year of horror, heartbreak, and community outrage, it all comes down to this. Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. Milwaukee County Circuit Court. Judge Laura Crivello's courtroom on the 6th floor. The case that has captivated a nation is finally going to trial. State of Wisconsin versus Maxwell Anderson. The charges: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, arson of property other than a building. If convicted on the homicide charge alone, Maxwell Anderson faces life in prison. At 8:30 a.m., the first pool of 50 potential jurors enters the courtroom. Another 30 will follow that afternoon. In a case this notorious, finding an impartial jury won't be easy. The prosecution has submitted a witness list with more than 250 names. Police officers, forensic scientists, family members, even a bus driver who captured crucial surveillance footage. For the prosecution, Assistant District Attorney Ian Vanskersen, the man who called this case the highest level of violence imaginable. For the defense, Anthony Cotton, a Waukesha criminal defense attorney who has spent months analyzing phone records, searching for an alibi that could save his client's life. This trial was supposed to happen in December 2024, but Anderson's defense team requested a delay, claiming they needed more time to analyze phone evidence that might prove their client's innocence. Sada's mother, Sheena Scarborough, was highly upset by the delay. Through her attorney, she expressed her frustration. Why was the information not requested when this case first started? Why were experts not retained when the entire world knew that one of the ways he was connected to this case was his cell phone? But Judge Crivello granted the delay, saying, "I do not want to create any type of issue on appeal. I am going to grant the defense's motion to adjourn." Now, 5 months later, there are no more delays. No more excuses. It's time for the truth. The prosecution's case is built on a mountain of evidence that reads like a digital age detective story. Surveillance footage from twisted fishermen showing Anderson and Saad together on their final date. Phone records tracking Sada's device from the restaurant to Duke's on Water to Anderson's house to the locations where her remains were found. Video from Cudahy High School showing a car matching Sada's Honda Civic driving toward Warnemont Park at 2:53 a.m. Bus surveillance footage showing Anderson getting on public transportation shortly after Sada's car was set on fire, wearing clothes that matched witness descriptions. Blood found on Anderson's bedroom walls and leading to his basement. Gasoline containers in his garage. The sex dungeon with restraints and torture implements. And perhaps most damning of all, the testimony from the confidential informant who says Anderson showed him the basement a month before the murder and detailed exactly how he planned to kill and dismember Saad Robinson. But Anderson's defense team isn't going down without a fight. They claim to have evidence that Anderson was using his home internet, presumably at his house, during the time frame when someone else would have been driving Sada's car around Milwaukee. It's a desperate gambit, an attempt to create reasonable doubt in the face of overwhelming evidence. But this trial isn't just about evidence and alibis. It's about a family that still doesn't have all the pieces of their daughter to bury. As Sada's uncle David Scarborough too said outside the courthouse, "My sister and parents won't stop shaking, and it ain't because they're nervous." Imagine trying to bury your niece with no body for the service. And Sheena Scarborough's raw grief. Who would do something like this to my beautiful baby? She hurt nobody. She harmed nobody. Assistant District Attorney Ian Vanskersen captured the horror of what Anderson did when he told the court. The allegations in the complaint are abhorrent. It is the highest level of violence imaginable. Against a 19-year-old woman whose only crime was saying yes to a first date. Milwaukee is watching. The nation is watching. And Saad Robinson's spirit, the girl who lit up every room she entered, who dreamed of flying fighter jets, who was the heart of Pizza Shuttle, is watching too. Over the next 2 weeks, a jury of Maxwell Anderson's peers will hear testimony that will test the limits of human endurance. They'll see crime scene photos that will haunt their dreams. They'll hear evidence of premeditation so cold, so calculated, that it defies comprehension. And then they'll be asked to do what the community of Milwaukee has already done. Render a verdict on a man who turned a first date into a death sentence. This is more than a murder trial. This is a reckoning. A moment when society looks evil in the face and says, "Not in our community. Not to our daughters." Not on our watch. Saad Robinson was failed by the dating app that connected her to a predator. She was failed by a system that didn't recognize the warning signs in Anderson's escalating violence against women. She was failed by a society that doesn't take missing black women seriously until their body parts wash up on beaches. But she won't be failed by this jury. She won't be failed by this community. She won't be failed by the justice system that is finally ready to hold her killer accountable. Because Saad Robinson's story doesn't end with her death. It doesn't end with her dismemberment. It doesn't end with racist emails trying to deny her a memorial. Her story ends with justice. Her story ends with a community that refused to let darkness win. Her story ends with Saada's voice, a foundation that will protect other young women from the predators who walk among us. Her story ends with love conquering hate and light defeating darkness, one verdict at a time. Maxwell Anderson thought he had committed the perfect crime. He thought his planning, his basement, his digital cleanup would let him get away with murder. He was wrong, dead wrong. And now it's time to pay. Justice for Saad Robinson. Justice for every missing woman whose story doesn't make headlines. Justice for a community that loved a girl so much they transformed a house of horrors into a monument of pink. This is her story. This is their reckoning. This is justice. Saad Carlina Robinson, May 10th, 2004 to April 1st, 2024. Daughter, sister, friend. The heart of Pizza Shuttle. A light that still shines in the darkness. She wanted to fly. And in the hearts of those who loved her, she always will. If you or someone you know needs help with domestic violence or dating safety, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit thehotline.org. If Saad Robinson's story shook you good, it should. Here's what you do right now. If you're dating online, screenshot this and create a safety plan. Share your location. Tell someone where you're going. Always. Like this video if her story mattered. Subscribe if you believe justice matters. Share this with someone who needs to see it, because your share could save a life. Don't let her death be in vain. Justice for Saad. Protection for the next Saad. Stay vigilant. Stay safe. Never stop fighting.
She spent her last moments fighting. This is my only child. My daughter will be 26, October 26th of this year.
Police complaint in the shooting death of an Amarillo woman August 31st paints a picture of a wave of lives that surveillance video contradicts. Dylan Black is charged with murder.
It was a warm summer night in Amarillo, Texas, August 31st, 2024. The bars had just closed, and the streets buzzed with laughter and chatter. A group of friends, young and carefree, decided to keep the night alive. They moved the party to a house on Avondale Street, a quiet neighborhood where the night seemed peaceful. But peace was the last thing they would find. As the hours passed, the atmosphere shifted. Uninvited guests began to arrive, dozens of them. The mood grew tense, voices rose, and the night took a turn no one could have imagined. By 3 a.m., the sound of a gunshot echoed through the street, shattering the night and leaving a young woman, full of life and promise, bleeding on the pavement. Her name was Felita Bailey. She was just 25 years old. But this is not just a story about a shooting. It's a story about a mother's relentless fight for justice, a family's struggle against a system that seemed to turn a blind eye, and a community left reeling from the loss of a bright soul. It's a story that raises questions about accountability, about who gets to walk free, and who is left to pick up the pieces. What really happened that night? Who pulled the trigger? And why? Despite overwhelming evidence, did the wheels of justice seem to grind to a halt? The answers are as shocking as they are heartbreaking. Before we uncover the truth behind Felita Bailey's tragic death, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Stay with us because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice. Felita Jovan Bailey wasn't just a name in a news story or a face in a photograph. She was a force of life, a young woman whose presence could light up a room and whose dreams were as big as her heart. Born on October 26, 1998, in Amarillo, Texas, Felita grew up surrounded by love and resilience. Her mother, Odessa Bailey, often described her as the family's hype woman, as someone who could make you laugh even on your worst day. Felita had a smile that was contagious and a laugh that could fill a room. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her feel seen, heard, and valued. Felita's journey took her from Amarillo to Dallas, where she graduated from Mesquite High School in 2017. She was a hard-working and determined young woman, balancing her dreams with a deep sense of responsibility. From a young age, Felita helped her mother run their family catering business, a testament to her industrious spirit and dedication to her family. She was the kind of person who would go out of her way to lift others up, whether it was through her infectious energy or her unwavering support. At the time of her death, Felita was working toward a certification as a dental hygienist, a career she was passionate about. She had recently moved back to Amarillo in January 2024 to be closer to her grandmother and other family members. It was a decision rooted in love, a chance to reconnect with her roots while pursuing her dreams. Felita was employed at Tyson Foods, where she had been working for 8 months, and was actively taking classes to achieve her professional goals. But Felita wasn't just about work and ambition. She loved life. She enjoyed singing, dancing, and spending time with her family and friends. She was the kind of person who could turn an ordinary day into a celebration, always bringing joy and positivity wherever she went. Her family remembers her as someone who cherished every moment, someone who lived life to the fullest. Felita's life was a tapestry of love, ambition, and resilience. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a dreamer. But on the night of August 31st, 2024, her bright future was brutally cut short. What started as a casual gathering with friends turned into a nightmare, one that would leave her family shattered and a community demanding answers. What would you do if someone you loved was taken from you in such a senseless act of violence? Let us know in the comments below. And as we delve deeper into this story, remember, Felita Bailey was more than a victim. She was a light that will never be forgotten. The night of August 31st, 2024, began like any other weekend for Felita Bailey and her friends. The group had spent the evening at Bodegas, a popular bar in the 700 block of Polk Street in Amarillo. Laughter filled the air as they enjoyed each other's company, unwinding after a long week. When the bar closed at 2 a.m., the night was still young, and the group decided to keep the party going. They moved to a house on the 1300 block of Avondale Street, where friends Antonio and Josue Marrero lived with their parents. It was supposed to be a small, intimate gathering, a chance to relax and enjoy the rest of the night. But what happened next would change everything. As the group settled in, the atmosphere began to shift. Uninvited guests started arriving, dozens of them. What began as a handful of friends quickly turned into a crowd of nearly 40 people. The house, once filled with laughter, now buzzed with tension. The Marrero brothers, realizing the situation was getting out of hand, asked Latoya Johnson, a friend of Feli's, to help them clear out the uninvited guests. But as they tried to restore order, the night took a dark turn. According to witness accounts, a confrontation broke out. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and suddenly chaos erupted. Latoya Johnson was attacked by several individuals and dragged into the street. The fight spilled out of the house, drawing the attention of neighbors and passers-by. And then, at around 3:20 a.m., the unthinkable happened. 4 gunshots rang out, shattering the night and leaving 2 people wounded. Felita Bailey, who had been caught in the chaos, was shot in the upper torso and shoulder. Latoya Johnson, who had tried to protect her, was struck in the leg. Both were rushed to Northwest Texas Hospital, but for Felita, the injuries were too severe. She fought for her life, but tragically, she did not survive. The vibrant young woman who had been full of dreams and laughter was gone. The aftermath of the shooting was a whirlwind of confusion and grief. Amarillo police arrived at the scene to find shell casings from a 9mm handgun scattered across the street. Surveillance footage from the Marrero's doorbell camera captured the sounds of a large fight and showed a man in a New York Yankees cap, a ski mask, and dark clothing later identified as Dylan Black with what appeared to be a gun in his waistband. Witnesses reported hearing Black say something about shooting someone before the gunfire erupted. But the story doesn't end there. In the hours and days that followed, the investigation took unexpected turns. Dylan Black, the man seen on camera, was arrested and charged with murder. But as the case unfolded, questions began to arise. Why were there so many uninvited guests at the party? Who else was involved in the altercation? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking details of what happened next. Don't forget to hit the like button if you're hooked already, because this story is far from over. As the chaos unfolded outside the house on Avondale Street, Felita Bailey found herself in the middle of a nightmare. Witnesses describe a scene of utter pandemonium, shouting, pushing, and the sound of fists hitting flesh. But for Felita, the violence was far more personal. According to her mother, Odessa Bailey, Felita was not just an innocent bystander. She was targeted. Odessa recounts the horrifying details with a voice trembling with grief and anger. They tore her clothes, pulled her hair, and left her fighting for her life. My baby was assaulted by multiple men. She was just trying to defend herself, and then the gunshots rang out. The assault on Felita was brutal and unrelenting. Witnesses say she was cornered by several individuals, including Dylan Black, the man later seen on surveillance footage wearing a New York Yankees cap and a ski mask. Felita, who had rejected Black's advances earlier in the night, became the focus of his rage. As the confrontation escalated, Black allegedly drew a gun. 4 shots were fired in quick succession. One struck Felita in the upper torso and shoulder, while another hit Latoya Johnson in the leg as he tried to intervene and protect her. The sound of gunfire sent the crowd scattering in all directions. Neighbors, awakened by the commotion, called 911. But for Felita, the damage was done. She lay on the ground, bleeding and struggling to breathe, as her friends screamed for help. Latoya Johnson, despite his own injuries, tried to stay by her side until paramedics arrived. Both were rushed to Northwest Texas Hospital, but Felita's injuries were too severe. She fought for her life, but tragically she did not survive. The aftermath of the shooting was a blur of grief and confusion. Felita's family, who had been unaware of the events unfolding that night, received the devastating news hours later. Odessa Bailey recalls the moment she found out her daughter had been killed. I couldn't breathe. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. My baby was gone, and I didn't even get to say goodbye. But the pain didn't end there. For 5 agonizing days, Felita's body remained unidentified. The hospital had released her to an unauthorized funeral home, leaving her family in the dark. When Odessa finally saw her daughter's body, she was horrified. She had knots on her head, bruises everywhere. They had torn her clothes, pulled her hair. My baby was treated like she was nothing. The assault and shooting that night were not just acts of violence, they were a betrayal. Felita, a young woman full of life and promise, was robbed of her future in the most senseless way imaginable. Her family was left to pick up the pieces, grappling with a loss that no parent should ever have to endure. Can you imagine the pain of losing a child in such a brutal way? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the hours and days following the shooting, Felita Bailey's family was thrust into a harrowing ordeal of confusion, neglect, and heartbreak. While the community grappled with the violence that had erupted on Avondale Street, Odessa Bailey and her family faced a different kind of pain, one marked by silence, indifference, and a growing sense of betrayal. For 5 agonizing days, Felita's family was left in the dark. No one from the hospital or the police department contacted them to inform them of her death. Odessa Bailey, Felita's mother, recalls the moment she found out her daughter had been killed. "I didn't hear it from the police. I didn't hear it from the hospital. I found out through the news. My baby was gone, and no one even bothered to tell me." The lack of communication was staggering. Felita's body had been taken to Northwest Texas Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. But instead of notifying her next of kin, the hospital released her body to an unauthorized funeral home. For 5 days, Felita's family had no idea where she was. When Odessa finally saw her daughter's body, she was devastated. "My baby was treated like she was nothing." The delay in identifying Felita's body raised troubling questions. Why had the hospital failed to notify her family? Why was her body moved without proper authorization? And why, in those critical days, did it feel like the system was working against the family rather than for them? The police department's handling of the case only added to the family's anguish. Despite the presence of surveillance footage, witness statements, and physical evidence, the Amarillo Police Department seemed more focused on protecting the suspect, Dylan Black, than seeking justice for Felita. Black, who had been seen on camera wearing a New York Yankees cap and carrying a gun, was arrested and charged with murder. But within days, the charges were dropped due to what authorities called insufficient evidence. Odessa Bailey was outraged. "They didn't even try," she said. "They had the video. They had the gun. They had witnesses. But they let him go. How is that justice?" Her frustration was compounded by the fact that the police had failed to notify her of Black's release, leaving her in fear for her own safety. "This man is out there walking free, and no one seems to care," she added. The family's pain was further deepened by the lack of communication from law enforcement. Odessa recalls calling the police repeatedly, only to be met with indifference. "They didn't even know my daughter's name," she said. "They couldn't tell me anything about her case. It was like they didn't care." As the days turned into weeks, Odessa took to social media to share her story, pleading for justice and accountability. Her posts, filled with raw emotion and unflinching honesty, struck a chord with thousands of people. A GoFundMe was set up to help cover funeral expenses and legal fees, but for Odessa, the fight was about more than money. It was about ensuring that Felita's death would not be swept under the rug. If you're as outraged as we are, share this video to spread awareness about Felita's story. Because this isn't just about one family's loss, it's about a system that failed them, a community that mourns with them, and a young woman whose light was extinguished far too soon. As the investigation into Felita Bailey's murder unfolded, the Amarillo Police Department faced mounting scrutiny. The evidence seemed clear. Surveillance footage from the Marrero's doorbell camera captured a man in a New York Yankees cap, a ski mask, and dark clothing later identified as 22-year-old Dylan Black, with what appeared to be a gun in his waistband. Witnesses reported hearing Black say something about shooting someone before the gunfire erupted. 4 shell casings from a 9mm handgun were found at the scene, and the ATF later matched them to a Taurus handgun linked to Black. But despite this seemingly overwhelming evidence, the case took a shocking turn. Dylan Black was arrested and charged with murder, but within days the charges were dropped. The reason? Authorities claimed there was insufficient evidence to proceed. For Odessa Bailey, this was a devastating blow. They had everything they needed, she said. The video, the gun, the witnesses. But they let him go. How is that justice? The decision to release Black sparked outrage, not just within Felita's family, but across the community. Many questioned whether the justice system had failed Felita and her loved ones. Lieutenant James Clements of the Amarillo Police Department explained that while Black remained a suspect, the charges were dropped pending further review of information and evidence. But for Odessa, this explanation was not enough. They're protecting him, she said. They don't care about my daughter. They don't care about justice. The investigation revealed troubling details about Black's history. At just 22 years old, he already had an extensive criminal record, including charges for burglary, assault, and multiple probation violations. Yet, time and again, he had been allowed to walk free. This pattern of leniency left many wondering how someone with such a history could be released so easily, especially in connection with a murder case. Do you think the justice system failed Felita and her family? Let us know your thoughts below. And as we continue to unravel this story, remember Felita Bailey's life was more than the tragedy that ended it. She was a daughter, a friend, and a light that will never be forgotten. In the wake of Felita Bailey's tragic death, her mother, Odessa, emerged as a fierce advocate for justice. Refusing to let her daughter's memory fade into obscurity, Odessa took her fight to the public, determined to hold those responsible accountable. I will fight for Felita until my last breath, she vowed. This isn't just about my daughter, it's about every family that's been failed by the system. Odessa's journey for justice began with a series of emotional social media posts where she shared the raw, unfiltered truth about what happened to Felita. Her words resonated with thousands, sparking outrage and rallying support from people across the country. She didn't just want answers, she wanted systemic change. This isn't just about one case, she said. It's about a system that protects the guilty and ignores the victims. One of Odessa's first steps was to set up a GoFundMe to help cover funeral expenses, legal fees, and the costs of pursuing justice. The campaign quickly gained traction, with donations pouring in from strangers moved by Felita's story. But for Odessa, the fight was about more than money. It was about ensuring that Felita's death would not be in vain. We're not just fighting for Felita, she said. We're fighting for every young woman who's been failed by the system. Odessa also reached out to local officials, demanding transparency and accountability from the Amarillo Police Department. She met with detectives, city officials, and even the chief of police, but her pleas often fell on deaf ears. They don't care, she said. They're more interested in protecting their own than seeking justice for my daughter. Despite the obstacles, Odessa remained steadfast. She organized community rallies, spoke at press conferences, and used every platform available to keep Felita's story in the public eye. Her determination inspired others to join the fight, creating a groundswell of support that could not be ignored. We're not going away, she said. We're going to keep fighting until we get justice for Felita. Odessa's fight is far from over. She continues to push for answers, demanding that the truth be uncovered, and that those responsible be held accountable. This isn't just about my daughter, she said. It's about every family that's been failed by the system. We're not going to stop until we get justice. If you want to support Felita's family, check out the link in the description to donate to their GoFundMe. Every contribution helps them continue their fight for justice. And as we move into the final chapter of this story, remember Felita Bailey's light will never be forgotten. Felita Bailey's story is more than a tragedy, it's a wake-up call. Her death has shaken the Amarillo community to its core, exposing deep flaws in the justice system and sparking a movement for change. Across the city, people are coming together to demand accountability, transparency, and justice not just for Felita, but for every victim who has been failed by the system. In the weeks following Felita's death, vigils and rallies were held in her honor. Friends, family, and strangers alike gathered to remember her vibrant spirit and to call for action. Signs bearing her name and messages like "Justice for Felita" and "No More Silence" filled the streets, as the community made it clear that they would not let her death be forgotten. But the impact of Felita's story extends far beyond Amarillo. Her case has drawn national attention, shining a light on the systemic issues that allow violence against women, particularly women of color, to go unpunished. Advocates and activists have joined Odessa's fight, using Felita's story to push for broader reforms in how cases of violence are investigated and prosecuted. Felita's story is a reminder that justice is not just the responsibility of law enforcement, it's the responsibility of all of us. By sharing her story, demanding accountability, and supporting her family, we can help ensure that no other family has to endure this kind of pain. This isn't just about Felita, Odessa says. It's about every young woman who's been failed by the system. It's about making sure this never happens again. If you believe in justice for Felita, hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Together we can keep her memory alive and fight for a world where no family has to suffer the way Felita's has. Because her story isn't over not until justice is served. Felita Jovan Bailey was a beacon of light, a young woman whose laughter, kindness, and ambition touched everyone she met. Her dreams of becoming a dental hygienist, her love for her family, and her unwavering spirit made her a force to be reckoned with. But on August 31st, 2024, that light was extinguished far too soon, leaving a void that can never be filled. As we reflect on Felita's life and the tragedy of her death, we are reminded of the fragility of life and the importance of fighting for justice. Her story is not just a tale of loss, it's a call to action. It's a reminder that we must hold those in power accountable, demand transparency, and stand up for those who can no longer stand for themselves. Felita's family, friends, and community continue to honor her memory. Balloons were released on what would have been her 26th birthday, a bittersweet celebration of a life cut short. Her mother, Odessa, remains steadfast in her fight for justice, determined to ensure that Felita's death was not in vain. "My baby's light will never go out," Odessa says. "We will keep fighting until we get the justice she deserves." As we close this chapter, we ask you to remember Felita not as a victim, but as a vibrant, loving, and ambitious young woman who deserves so much more. Her fight is now our fight. Together, we can ensure that her story sparks change and that no other family has to endure this kind of pain. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Together, we can make a difference. Rest in peace, Felita. Your light will never be forgotten.
Pub, when he get his 3-0 for pregnant.
So my last day pregnant before I have to go to the hospital for my 37-week C-section. Tajay and Tajane today. Y'all, today I become a mother of 4. Lucky 4. 4 little pretty.
Today I become a mother of 4. Lucky 4. 11 days. That's all it took to transform a celebration of new life into a crime scene. That's how long Devonnie Cummings had with her newborn twin daughters before a bullet to her neck ended her story forever. In the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2025, police responded to a disturbing call at an Oakland apartment. Inside, they found a scene that would haunt even veteran officers. A 19-year-old mother dead in her bedroom while twin newborns slept peacefully in the next room, completely unaware they would never feel their mother's touch again. But what makes this case particularly chilling isn't just the murder of a young mother. It's what happened in those crucial moments after the trigger was pulled. The man standing over Devonnie's body, 34-year-old Terrence Miles, the father of those sleeping newborns, didn't call 911. He didn't try to save her. Instead, he pulled out his phone and dialed his mother. "Mom, help! I shot her. I didn't mean to." Those words reveal everything about the man who would later claim this was all just a tragic accident. As Devonia lay dying, as seconds that could have meant life or death ticked away, Terrence Miles was more concerned with explaining himself than saving the mother of his children. This isn't just another tragic headline. This is the story of Devonia Cummings, a young woman who grew up too fast, trusted too deeply, and whose 4 young children will now grow up without their mother. Welcome to True Crime Tales HQ, where we don't just tell stories, we expose the truth behind the headlines that shatter lives and communities. Before we dive into today's case, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Each subscription helps us continue bringing these important stories to light, and hitting the notification bell ensures you never miss an upload. If you find this story impactful, please share it. Your share could literally save someone's life. Devonia Yaya Cummings was born January 10, 2006, in Oakland, California, a city known equally for its resilience and its struggles. Those who knew her describe a young woman with electric energy, a laugh that filled rooms, and a fierce loyalty to those she loved. She was admittedly messy and loud, but beneath that exterior beat the heart of someone desperately searching for stability in a world that offered her none. Devonia's childhood looked nothing like most. Where other children's social media might show family vacations or school events, hers displayed a digital mosaic of absence. Free my daddy, free my mama, free my brother. With her father imprisoned, her brother incarcerated, and her mother behind bars as well, Devonia wasn't so much raised as she survived. There were no bedtime stories, no homework help, no guidance on navigating adolescence. The system that should have caught her, should have seen a child drowning in adult responsibilities, simply looked the other way. While most children worried about math tests and playground politics, Devonia was learning to cook for herself, to manage a household, to exist in a world without protection. Each morning presented a new challenge, each day another lesson in growing up too fast. At just 13 years old, when most girls are navigating middle school hallways, Devonia's life took its first dramatic turn. Through mutual friends, she met a boy whose presence would forever alter her path. What began as teenage infatuation quickly evolved into something far more consequential. By October 2019, while her classmates were picking Halloween costumes, 13-year-old Devonia was in a delivery room, bringing life into a world she barely understood herself. Mayani Jana Cummings arrived, a beautiful baby girl with eyes that reflected her mother's in a future just as uncertain. Picture this, a 13-year-old, still growing herself, learning to change diapers and mix formula while her peers passed notes in algebra class. Her backpack now contained both school textbooks and baby supplies. Her nights, once filled with homework and television, now revolved around feeding schedules and soothing cries. Childhood ended not in a gradual transition, but in an abrupt, irreversible moment. Yet amidst this chaos, something remarkable happened. Devonia, who had been failed by nearly every adult in her life, vowed not to fail her daughter. In social media posts and private conversations, she began to refer to Mayani as my reason, the reason to wake up, to push forward, to imagine a future beyond the cycle that had defined her own childhood. By age 16, Devonia was still searching for that elusive sense of family and belonging. Social media, a digital landscape where reality and fantasy often blur, introduced her to a new figure who would leave another mark on her story. He went by Banga BBMG online, a local figure with his own following and complicated history. Their relationship played out as much on Instagram as in real life. Comment sections became war zones. Screenshots of private messages became public ammunition. Behind the screens, though, a more traditional story was unfolding. Devonia became pregnant again. By June 2022, at just 16 years old, she welcomed her second daughter, Miracle Jana Cummings. While her online persona continued to clash with baby mama drama, her private reality was that of a 16-year-old juggling 2 children under the age of 3. The contrast was stark, fierce and combative in her digital life, exhausted and overwhelmed in her physical one. In June 2023, tragedy struck when Banga passed away unexpectedly. What happened next surprised those who had only known Devonia through her digital battles. The young woman who had spent months engaged in online warfare with Banga's other children's mothers now showed a depth of grief that was raw and unfiltered. She even reached out to the very women she had once feuded with, vowing to help care for Banga's other children. We family now, whether we like it or not. This loss seemed to mature Devonia in ways that motherhood alone hadn't. There was a shift in her online presence. Fewer feuds, more reflective posts about building something stable for her children. But grief also creates vulnerability. And Devonia, now a 17-year-old single mother of two, was about to encounter the man whose influence would ultimately prove fatal. Enter Terrence Miles. At 34 years old, he was nearly twice Devonia's age when they first connected. The gap wasn't just in years, it was in life experience, in power, in understanding the consequences of actions. For a teenager who had already endured more than most adults, perhaps there was something appealing about an older man who seemed to offer the stability she'd never known. What Devonia couldn't possibly have known, or perhaps chose to ignore, was the darkness that followed Terrence like a shadow. His criminal record told the story. 5 prior felony convictions, including assault with a deadly weapon. A man whose history whispered of violence, of patterns that never changed, of storms that always returned no matter how long the sun shined. Their relationship progressed quickly. By early 2024, Devonia was pregnant with Terrence's child. The news brought a mix of emotions, fear of a third child while still a teenager herself, but also hope that this time might be different, that this man might stay, that this child might be born into something resembling stability. Tragedy struck in May 2024 when Devonia lost the pregnancy. The loss was devastating, another blow in a life that seemed defined by them. For a young woman who had already weathered so much, this loss felt particularly cruel. By September 2024, in a twist that seemed almost miraculously hopeful, Devonia discovered she was pregnant again, this time with twins. 2 heartbeats instead of 1. Double the possibility, double the promise. Something shifted in Devonia when she learned about the twins. Her social media transformed. Gone were the cryptic messages, the online feuds, the defensive posturing. In their place emerged something softer, more vulnerable, more genuinely joyful. She posted ultrasound pictures with captions like, "Losing my baby boy in May. God blessed me and my husband with twin girls." The word husband was notable, not because there had been a wedding, but because it signaled how Devonia viewed Terrence, how she was trying to construct a family narrative from pieces that might not fit. What wasn't visible in those carefully curated posts was what happened behind closed doors. The arguments that neighbors would later report hearing through thin apartment walls. The controlling behaviors that friends would later recall noticing but not naming. The pressure of a man with a violent history trying to present himself as a father-to-be, while his demons whispered that he wasn't capable of such a role. February 21st, 2025 marked what should have been the happiest day of Devonia's life. At Oakland Medical Center, she underwent a C-section to deliver her twin daughters, Taj and Taj, both healthy and perfect. "Today I become a mother of 4. Lucky 4, she posted from her hospital bed, her face radiating happiness that seemed almost foreign on features more accustomed to guarded expressions. Her social media transformed into a celebration of new life. Photos of tiny fingers wrapped around her own. Videos of the twins sleeping peacefully side by side. Captions filled with hope and plans. "It is a question of my heart. You got it. It don't belong to anyone but you," she wrote beneath a video of herself cradling one of the twins. But the reality of bringing newborn twins home to an apartment where 2 other children needed attention, all while recovering from major surgery, created immense pressure. C-section recovery alone is grueling. Add the relentless demands of newborns, the emotional needs of older children, and the cramped quarters of an Oakland apartment. The situation was a pressure cooker. It was during this vulnerable time that the cracks in Terrence's facade widened into chasms. Neighbors would later recall arguments growing increasingly frequent after the twins came home. 2 days before the tragedy, one neighbor overheard a particularly disturbing outburst. "You had kids before. Why you acting helpless now?" Cruel words directed at a woman who had just undergone major surgery while caring for newborns. The morning of March 2nd, 2025 began routinely. Around 8 a.m., Devonia fed the twins, changed them, and laid them back in their bassinet, taking one last photo of their peaceful faces for social media. She then texted her cousin, "I'll call you later today. Something important I need to tell you about our situation here." That call would never come. What we know with certainty is that an argument erupted between Devonia and Terrence. At some point, Terrence, a convicted felon legally barred from possessing firearms, reached for the Glock pistol he kept hidden in the apartment. In one moment that would forever alter 4 children's lives, he pointed the weapon at 19-year-old Devonia and pulled the trigger, striking her in the neck. Instead of immediately calling for help, Terrence called his mother. "Mom, help! I shot her. I didn't mean to." Let that sink in. In those critical moments when emergency intervention might have made a difference, Terrence was on the phone with his mother, not desperately seeking medical help, but setting up his defense. His mother, shocked by her son's call, took precious minutes to process the information before finally calling 911 herself. By the time police arrived at the apartment on 74th Avenue, it was too late. Officers found Terrence sitting calmly in the living room with the twins sleeping in their bassinet. The contrast was jarring. In one room, a young mother's life had violently ended. In another, 2 newborn babies slept peacefully, completely unaware of how drastically their lives had just changed. As investigators examined the scene, Terrence's story quickly unraveled. The angle of Devonia's wound contradicted an accidental discharge during gun handling. The trajectory indicated she had been shot from across the room, not during a close-up struggle or inspection of the weapon. There were no powder burns on her skin, confirming distance between shooter and victim. Perhaps most damning was the state of the gun itself. The weapon appeared partially wiped clean of fingerprints. Not completely, but enough to suggest an attempt to obscure evidence. This wasn't the panicked response to a tragic accident. This was the calculated action of someone trying to cover his tracks. As the investigation deepened, Devonia's phone revealed the most heartbreaking aspect of this tragedy. She had been planning her escape. In the 48 hours before her death, her search history included queries for women's shelters in Oakland, guides on how to leave safely with children, and resources for single mothers. She had reached out to family members asking if she and her children could stay with them, just until I figure things out. She knew she was in danger. She was trying to find a way out. But in the vulnerability of C-section recovery, with 4 children depending on her, her options were limited, her movements restricted, her ability to flee compromised by the very love that bound her to her children. Terrence Miles was arrested at the scene and charged with murder, domestic violence, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. He remains at Santa Rita Jail without bail, scheduled to appear in court on April 1st to enter his plea. By some small mercy, Devonia's older children weren't home during the shooting. A family friend had picked them up the previous day, sparing them from witnessing the aftermath of their mother's murder. The 11-day-old twins, blissfully unaware, are now in the custody of Devonia's extended family, along with their older siblings. The cruel reality is that these 4 children will grow up without the fierce young woman who fought so hard to give them stability. The twins will never know their mother's touch, never hear her voice except in videos, never experience firsthand the love she had already begun pouring into their lives during those precious 11 days they had together. Devonia Cummings' story illuminates tragic failures at every turn. A 13-year-old becomes pregnant, and no one intervenes. A teenager gives birth to 4 children by 19, and no social safety net appears. A convicted felon acquires a gun, and no red flags are raised. A young mother searches for women's shelters days before her murder, and no lifeline reaches her in time. In every chapter of Devonia's short life, warning signs flashed like neon in the darkness. Her childhood surrounded by incarcerated family members, her early pregnancies, her relationship with a man with a violent history nearly twice her age, the arguments neighbors heard through thin walls. At each turn, opportunities for intervention came and went, leaving a 19-year-old to navigate a minefield alone. Now 4 children must grow up without their mother, carrying the legacy of a system that protects neither vulnerable mothers nor innocent children. They inherit futures forever altered by a single gunshot, All because a young woman believed in second chances, in the possibility of family, in a love that ultimately proved deadly. If you recognize the signs of domestic violence in your own life or someone else's, please reach out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-879-97-2333. No one should face these dangers alone. Devonia Cummings wasn't just murdered. She was failed repeatedly by a society that saw a Black teenage mother and looked away. Her life ended as it began, surrounded by dysfunction, abandoned by systems meant to protect her, and betrayed by someone she trusted. May her story be more than just a statistic. May it be a call to action. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it so others can learn from Devonia's tragedy, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that need to be told. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What warning signs were missed? How can we better protect vulnerable young mothers? Your engagement helps these important conversations reach those who need to hear them.